The entrepreneurs that impress me the most are the ones that know their subject very, very well.
What are your views on hiring? Like, how do you hire the right team?
If the person is mission oriented, right, then they're saying actually very different things.
Building something from scratch versus taking something that's given to you, how do you deal with the two differently?
I wanted your take on AI.
Train yourself to give up things. You just got to do small sacrifices. When I look at a lot of businesses out there, right, massively over competitive environment everywhere. I'm always looking at where can I actually have that spark of authenticity and originality.
Today we've got a very special guest joining us, Mr. Shikhar Malhotra. Welcome to the show, sir. Aayush, would you do the honors?
He's chairman of Shiv Nadar School, CEO and vice chairman of HCL, chancellor of Shiv Nadar University. That's a lot of titles you have. If you were to pick one and stick with it and drop everything else, what would it be?
It's hard. It's hard to pick any one of them because I'm deeply passionate about all of the spaces that I'm involved in. And I suppose the one that came first chronologically was Shiv Nadar School. So Shiv Nadar School, then HCL Healthcare, and then Shiv Nadar University. So in that sequence, yeah.
So with all of these roles and multiple passions, like I think there's this one notion that goes around that like entrepreneurs early on tend to get distracted doing too many things at the same time. Like what's your stance on that?
I think till I was about 33, I was deeply distracted. Okay, so I would, because I think I'm very creative by nature. And the paradox of that also is that I would get drawn to things which looked shiny at times. Okay, and what I actually realized after about 33, 34, right, is that I need to go deeper and focus more and more. So really need to master a few areas rather than to be knowledgeable about many. So I like the areas that I'm in, which is in education and health. And I could spend a lifetime of attaining mastery if I ever achieve it, right? But I think that the paradox of that is that, it's good to be creative within the space that I'm involved in rather than looking at more and more spaces. And in this lifetime, if I don't get to know any more spaces other than education and health, that's perfectly fine with me. Because I would rather be a master of a few, right, than, sort of jack of all trades.
But that's an interesting parallel because I've heard like this other statement which resonates with me. A jack of all trades, but a master of none. But more often than not, still a master of some.
It's possible. And so I'm a master of some. I'd like to think so, right? So I spend time owning that craft. And look, I've also got to shape my personality in a certain way that distractions come at you all the time, right? In all different directions. In the world that we live in, you're going to get swayed, right? At any which point. And somebody will come along and say, hey, Amaan, I got this like unbelievable idea, right? You're going to want to hear this. My reaction to that usually is that I'm not interested in hearing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to hear about stuff that I know, right? I'm not particularly interested in stuff that will take me the next 10 years to really attain mastery.
Right. But I do genuinely believe that the ability to say no is one of the most criminally underrated skills out there.
I suppose it comes with age. So, if I was 20, it's hard for me to say no because usually the people I'm saying no to are significantly older than me. And so, I'm not a sort of dominant person in that room, right? But 41 now, so it's, not enough practice in life. It's not hard for me to say no to a lot of things. And that I agree with you, it just comes with time, right? And then the more that you think and you reflect actually about what is it that you really want, the answer to say no actually comes out to be a lot easier.
I want to understand what's your take on personal brand, like your brand as Shikhar Malhotra, and how it would impact your ventures. Because I think that as an entrepreneur yourself, or as anyone who's an entrepreneur, like the founder's personal brand plays a great impact on his businesses itself. Is it necessary for an entrepreneur to build his own personal brand for his ventures to succeed, or is it a boon, or like, what do you feel about that?
So I never had that luxury because the brands that I represented were always far bigger than me.
Yeah.
Right? The one is the Shiv Nadar School name. So Shiv Nadar himself, massively iconic brand, right? There are entrepreneurs in every corner of the country that know exactly who he is. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to, let's say, channelize and build my own brand. One is that I wasn't personally very driven by it. Okay. And the second is it didn't make a lot of sense either to spend time and do that. I'd rather invest in the Shiv Nadar brand because people have to believe in the institution. And what I was building, I wasn't building a product company per se, right? I was building an institution which has to be larger than life. It has to outlive me. Okay. And if you look at the best academic institutions in the world, the average age is like 170 years or something like that, right? So these things cannot be built on personal brand. It doesn't make sense. They have to outlive the individual. So it's better to actually think institutionally and invest in the brand. So I took a different approach to actually invest in the institution, into ideas, into the vision, into stories, into culture, okay, which actually was far greater for me than any individual could possibly attain. Because the individual eventually runs out of time. And they run out of, and the individual could get distracted into 10 other things. Then what do you do, right? So it works brilliantly for some people. I think it works really well, especially in product companies, right? So cars and headphones and things like that. But I suppose I was a bit more old school like that. Let me ask you a question, right? When you look back on Fin for All, you said that there was only one other company out there that was focusing on financial literacy.
Yeah, majorly. Like
Majorly.
in terms of having a presence.
Having a presence.
Yeah.
So would you say you were piggybacking on a space of financial literacy, or were you carving a space for yourself?
No, we were definitely carving.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were carving a space for yourself, and why financial literacy? Why did you guys focus on financial literacy?
It might sound horrible, but the reason I started financial literacy and took finance was I would talk about it a lot. Like I've been trading stocks. Like Fin for All wasn't supposed to be a social media game. Amaan was supposed to be the head investor. I was supposed to be the quants trader. We were supposed to make a trading company and an investor-led company where we raise money. But
Oh, you guys are dangerous.
I don't know how that transitioned into it being a social media company. So
Okay.
there was knowledge to begin with. And the CPVs are the highest in finance. So I picked finance just because it had the most money. Brands paid the highest, like to finance creators, just by the sheer amount of money that was there to be made in that niche compared to other niches that took finance.
Yeah.
But to add one thing I was very proud of, we have never recommended a single stock, like a buy, hold or sell recommendation.
So the fact that you're saying that you carved a space for yourself,
Yeah.
right? You obviously took a bit of a contrarian approach, which
Yes,
is that
absolutely.
rather than saying that there are 10 other guys out there that are focusing on some aspect of stock recommendation, things like that, so let me just ride the wave and get into it. And then you start playing somebody else's game. That's where all of those metrics come into play, because you're playing somebody else's game.
Mm-hmm.
You took a contrarian approach, you carved a new space, you started playing your own game. I'll give you an example. Shiv Nadar School, when we were starting out, okay, we had to advertise, right? And we had no students, we had no teachers, we had no building. What do I advertise? Because I have to advertise for students and for teachers a year in advance, right? Because they've got to take the admission a year in advance.
We were the first students. You advertised to us. We joined when there was no building. Gurgaon School only had no building.
Exactly, right? So now I'm thinking, right? So my choices were, okay, I got an ad agency in, right? And they said, we're going to put these wonderful, cute looking babies, okay, into a photograph. And then there was like a mock-up of an architect's image, right? And basically you put that in and you say Shiv Nadar School inviting admissions and, so on and so forth, and people will come. But instinctively, I had a real issue with that idea, because when I would pick up the newspaper every morning, right, I would look through dozens of these kind of ads. They all looked exactly the same.
Yeah.
A lot of new schools coming up. Every one of them had really cute looking kids. Every one of them had an architect's rendering, right? And if you honestly put 30 of them together and you gave somebody 5 minutes to just comb through it, and then you asked them, to remember which, took the names when you asked them to remember which ad corresponded to which name, they wouldn't remember, right? So it was completely an overcrowded space. So what we ended up doing was, we took out an ad that simply said that our admission norms are stringent, ... for teachers.
That is brilliant messaging.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was just one sentence. That was it. There was nothing else, right? The reason we did that is because, one, it struck a chord with me very personally, because I hated playing somebody else's game. We did that, resounding success, because I was not looking to get 1 million eyeballs. I only needed 100 people, okay, that mattered in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And those people that mattered, so when you look at it, to those that mattered, they stood up and said, I'm very intrigued. Who are these guys? Yeah. So the inquiries started coming in, okay? Because I needed to create that inquiry. If I took out an ad with the architect's rendering, I didn't have a building, I didn't have teachers, I didn't have students, right? What am I going to really advertise?
Yeah.
Okay, so, so we went through it. We got very lucky with a lot of like-minded people. So the team was just incredible.
Yeah.
Right. Because if we are like-minded people, then you can snowball these ideas very, very quickly. Right. You don't have people pushing back and everything. The alignment was just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There was natural disagreements on, the direction and things like that. But the fundamental agreement that we've got to be an organization which is authentic and which is different, right? So when I look at a lot of businesses out there, right, massively over-competitive environment everywhere. I'm always looking at where can I actually have that spark of authenticity and originality. And to me, I'm drawn a bit more towards those things. I'm also drawn to it because I think I can do a better job. I can add more value. I'm not the best when I'm surrounded in a massively competitive space. I play to my strengths. I know what I'm good at. I know where I'm going to get my butt kicked. Okay. So I kind of stay away from that. You guys became also entrepreneurs at a very, very young age. The life skills that one typically acquires through their 20s, right? You bypassed all of that and you basically put up the business well before that. So you're learning. Yeah. So you're learning both at the same time. You're learning the business. You're learning people skills. You're learning life skills, and there's no escaping that now for you guys. Yeah. So you guys got to do both at the same time.
And I think also just the long term, the type of players it attracts is absolutely fascinating, because I think one reason this is genuinely possible, at least from my lens, is that I think I have been tremendously fortunate to partner with some mind-blowing founders out there, and also having a fantastic founding team. Like, honestly, it would have crashed and burned and died a long time ago if I did not have such a talented and driven bunch of people I get to know and work with.
We are very fortunate. If you get a great team, that's an amazing feeling, because they can resonate, you can bounce ideas off, and there's no way you can build this without a team, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, what are your views on hiring? Like, how do you hire the right team? Or what is the right team in your opinion?
So, also depends on the business, right? So there are certain qualities that I like to see uniformly in all hires. Okay, those are more characteristics. But in terms of skills, then it's different from different jobs. And but what I like is that it depends on the stage of a company. If I've got, let's say, a new company, if the person shows naturally curiosity, if the person asks a lot of questions, then they're thinking not about how do I land the job, they're thinking about how do I succeed in the job. To me, that's actually a great sign. So if they're asking some questions and understanding what it takes to succeed in the job, then I think I've got somebody who's a thinker, who's reflective, and those are great qualities to have. A lot of Shiv Nadar School qualities. Okay?
Yeah. So there was this video that went viral recently, Sam Altman. He's saying most companies that do fail are the ones who get one of the first three hires wrong.
Very true.
If you get one of the first three people wrong who doesn't align with your values or the values of the company, you've set yourself up for failure. There's a difference between late stage hiring and hiring the first few members. There's a different mindset that you have to go at it.
Yeah. Very true.
What was the mindset like when you went out? Like,
mission oriented. So I was looking at people who are mission oriented rather than career oriented. So career oriented people are, and you pick these signs up, they're thinking about themselves in the job, and the mission oriented people are thinking about the organization and the role and how they succeed in it. So you can make out the difference by the questions they ask, what they say, how they behave. If the person is mission oriented, right, then they're saying actually very different things.
They're figuring out how to make it happen.
They're not thinking about themselves. And at the early stage of a company, you have to have mission oriented people. If you have career oriented people, you're not going to go very far. So mission oriented means you have to sacrifice, right? A lot of sacrifice of time, egos, big thing, right? You got to just suck it up. If the person's got a lot of this thing that, I won't do this and I won't do that, right? That's a no-go in the early stages of a company. It just doesn't work. Mission-oriented people are the ones who always are basically saying, different things, right? They're getting into trouble because, he did more than the other person rather than the other way around. I'm
just like trying to piece this together. If you look at a mission-oriented person and you take a career-oriented person, normally, if you look at net outcomes, do you see mission-oriented people in your experience doing better in the long run?
Yes, but as the company grows, you need both, right? Because you can only find those many, let's say, mission-oriented people, real go-getters. There's nothing wrong with career-oriented people. It's just at the early stages. See, the mortality rate of a company is very high in the early stages.
Yeah,
very, very high, right? A lot of companies don't make it past year 3 and year 5. Right, so they either give up, they run out of money, maybe run out of ideas, and so you've got to have people that can see it through. So if there is a conflict or a problem, typically they don't find ways to go around it. They find ways to go through it. Okay, because you come out stronger on the other side. But you cannot grow without very good career-minded people as well. So surrounded by amazing people who are actually career-oriented and fantastic executives. Really, really good work. I learn a great deal from them. They have strengths that they bring to the table, which I typically don't. And if you're quite okay in them teaching you, and you create that environment where they can contribute to your learning as an entrepreneur, you'll be better off for it.
I have one question. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is my understanding. Shiv Nadar Schools as a foundation is something that you built from scratch. Like that's where you were invested into the project.
Yeah.
From the get-go.
I was the first CEO.
You were the first CEO.
Yeah.
The university, on the other hand, you joined much later into the venture. Like university, you weren't there from the beginning of it. How do you feel like as an entrepreneur, as a person who's in charge, it is building something from scratch versus taking something that's given to you? How do you deal with the two differently?
I don't necessarily have to make them a copy of each other.
Okay.
So that's the first thing, right? They have their own personality. They are both great institutions, and they are heavily oversubscribed by students. So obviously, both institutions are doing something right? And by parents. I think that it's the school is in a certain way because it's a school, but this is more of a science and technology and management-based institute too. So it's got a little bit of a different bent. Then you've got in a school, you'll have much more of a diverse environment because you can't pick the students when they come in. You can't pick the personality, right, at a very young age. So you're suddenly blessed with people who are STEM oriented, with people who are liberal arts oriented, people who are sciences based, and so on and so forth. Or like the two of you, management based. But in a university environment, you pick them for the discipline. So suddenly you've got a diverse but a more focused cohort. So then that becomes a little bit of the personality type as well, right? But I agree with you that there are certain good ideologies that you can always begin, right? So experiential learning can always be one that cuts across both, right? And those are the things that we're always trying to do. So in that sense, I don't know whether any university will ever be similar to a school if you ever go to anywhere in the world. But they're both incredible in their own right.
I wanted your take on AI. There are multiple schools of thought that kind of run with it. So like one is the dystopian version, which is, it's going to gain sentience. It's going to take over everything. It's going to break encryption. It's over for humanity. The other one I've kind of seen, which Aayush actually introduced to me, was AI is going to automate a lot of the grunt work out of things.
Yeah.
And that'll allow people to kind of, even though if they don't possess the skills per se, it'll allow them to explore more artistic pursuits and endeavors. So it's a more fulfilled kind of image of humanity. Then there's the third view, which is one that I particularly subscribe to, which is AI is going to uproot everything, yes, but on a fundamental level. Like, for instance, AI is going to be deflationary. So do you have a particular leaning towards when you're looking?
There are so many views out there. There are so many views actually out there that I reached a point where I just said that it's not worth having any more views. Okay, so one more person adding a view is not really going to, do anything for society. So then what we did is we said, let's just seed a lot of projects, okay, to do with AI, right? And a lot of Gen AI projects. Let's learn for ourselves, let's experiment for ourselves and actually see what happens with it. So we have about a dozen odd projects going, some in education, a lot in healthcare, in the preventive healthcare company that I run. So I'm learning actually by doing rather than learning just through the views, because the views are plenty and that's true. There's completely dystopian, utopian views and all of that. I'm actually kind of blown away with some of the stuff that I've seen because I can see the use cases for that to be tremendous. And when everyone in society is searching for use cases, basically there isn't enough stuff happening on the ground just yet, right? For it to become ubiquitous where everybody understands that, okay, this is what it can do and that's what it can do. So that's the best way of actually figuring this out. You just try seeding a lot of experiments and ideas and you see which one of them actually pans out. We think that one or two of our ideas will gallop much faster than the others will in the projects that we've seeded in, but we're betting on it big time for sure, because I think we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice but to do that. And at this point in time, I'm not doing it more as a cost-saving lever or anything like that. I like the creativity and the ideas that it can open up, right? And so different ways to actually serve your customers. For me, actually to learn that and then to be participative in those projects over there has been a tremendous learning experience.
Yeah.
But big one for sure. I think that if you're not thinking about it, it's going to be kind of hard because some businesses will take a massive hit.
Right. So, like
sure.
for younger people or early entrepreneurs like us, what would kind of be your advice if you were like in our position at the cusp of a highly disruptive period in history?
So, firstly, I have met a lot of young entrepreneurs. A lot of them have come to pitch, right? I find that the entrepreneurs that impress me the most are the ones that know their subject very, very well. Okay, they know it very deeply. So they've got good answers, they've got authentic answers, and when they don't know, they're very sincere about it that they don't know. So when you're dealing with somebody on the other side, and if you don't know, and you try to BS your way through, right? Very often the people on the other side are able to make out the difference. They're just not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you come across as being a bit sort of insincere, and it's not a great look, right? And especially nowadays when the market is tough for fundraising and things like that, right? It's even more important to basically be high on originality and authenticity, right? Be very sincere about what you're communicating, especially with numbers and things like that.
You mentioned you invest in a lot of businesses. I personally feel a great entrepreneur is not always a great employee, and vice versa also holds true. And you're running an educational institute, like you want to instill the values of entrepreneurship and self-independence in young students. What do you think makes a great employee different than a great founder? And how do you go about it from an educational standpoint? Like, how do you instill those values in a kid and let them differentiate on their own as well?
Good question. I have to think about it. I think that as an entrepreneur, to what the both of you referred to earlier, it's quite lonely because there are not a lot of people to talk to. So you have to be, I would imagine, a bit more resilient, arguably, let's say, than an employee, because you have to be there for the good times, but you've got to just suck it up for the bad times, right? And so people will look towards you. So your team will mimic your behavior and your attitude. If they think that you're down in the dumps, their morale will also be low. If you're strong and you're upbeat and you're going through it, it will encourage them also to do that. That comes from resilience, right? And so it comes from training. It's not something that you necessarily learn as an entrepreneur. You've learned it before, part of your upbringing, part of your training, part of your schooling, right? And so if you've gone through enough trials and tribulations, you will be a bit more resilient. That you won't get crushed under the first major crisis. So that I think good entrepreneurs generally, I think, are a bit more resilient for sure. So also, I don't want to necessarily just compare and say employees are not resilient. That's not what I'm saying at all, right? But I think the test that a employer or an entrepreneur will have will usually be very different.
Yeah.
Okay. So you exhibit those, you see those very clearly, right? When somebody's going through a tough time and coming out of it, and I have immense respect for those that have gone through a tough time and come out of it, right? Like I saw my own father do that 30 years ago. He went bankrupt and then bounced back and did even better. So for me to visualize that, and then a story for another podcast, long story, right? Because I was there during the Gulf War in Kuwait, so we lost everything at that time, went totally to zero, and I was left with only the clothes on my back, right? And so when we left Kuwait at that time, so for about 2-3 years we had practically nothing, right? But just witnessing that and witnessing survival instincts kick in, you got to scavenge to make a living, do whatever it takes, right? And then after that, things became a lot better. But those memories stay with you, and if you've seen that up front, right, your respect for that, and you can understand it. You don't get pushed away very hard. The second thing, I think, what I really like in certain let's say in employees more than entrepreneurs sometimes, is I find that great executives are a lot more organized.
Yeah.
And a lot more, sometimes better people oriented too. Okay, great entrepreneurs can be people oriented, but sometimes they're more enigmatic per se, right? Than let's say great people managers. Okay, the executive has to manage more and more people on a daily basis. So I have great respect for them, and so I lean on their strengths to do that. So I've given you one for each, which I think makes a big difference. If you have that, you've got a winning team actually.
How do you instill those values in kids in schools?
Resilience in school is really easy actually. You just got to do small sacrifices. Small sacrifices. Yep. Okay. So if you're training for a school team, are you willing to give up the evenings with your friends out to go super early into school to do that? Really small stuff. You don't have to do major stuff. But if you are a person that can say, you know what, I need to get to bed on time. And my friends are going to the mall, they're watching like, the new, whatever new movies coming out, and they're hanging out, they're chatting till late. But I got to get to bed at 9 because I've got to be up at, let's say, 6, and I've got to hit the training ground because I really want to excel in this particular sport. Okay. That is the smallest form of a sacrifice, but a super important thing that you can do, because what you're doing is you're training your mind to give up things and not be sucked into every shiny thing that comes your way. Really easy stuff to do.
Yeah. And it's these small changes that kind of add up over time and like just
A lot.
explode.
Exactly. A lot, right? Train yourself to give up things. If you can give up certain things at a teenage level, you're training yourself on micro resilience. Okay. I don't know if there's such a thing. I'm just making it up. But micro resilience is important, because micro resilience, many habits of this will eventually lead into bigger habits. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. My grandmom used to, so she, similar story, started from zero, became an entrepreneur herself. She raised me during my formative years. She always told me that you've got to make small sacrifices or sacrifices along the way. Otherwise, what you're trying to achieve and set out to do ends up becoming the sacrifice.
Very true. Yeah, very well said. So, Aayush, if I was sitting in front of, let's say, some Shiv Nadar School students that have done these micro sacrifices, whether it's in sports or something, and they wanted to pursue something. So they've excelled in something versus, let's say, Shiv Nadar School students that have not, right? And I wanted them to be part of a team. Which way do you think I would lean?
The one who sacrificed,
Yeah, because I know that at least the training is there, the mindset is there. Okay, it's not an entitled mindset. They won't give excuses, right? When things don't get done, they'll either get it done, right? Or basically they'll say, you know what, I'll try again.
The ability to get things done, the sincerity to put your head down and keep trying till you're able to get it done.
You know who my boss was, or is rather?
Who? Mr. Nadar. No.
Mr. Nadar.
Yeah.
How often do you think I can go to him and give him an excuse?
Never, maybe.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. I've tried.
You've tried though.
I've tried, and it was the first and the last time I ever did that. And I got a rollicking because he said, you have no option but to succeed. So it was very interesting because what he was telling me was, he believes in me. He just wasn't saying it. Okay. He said, you have no option but to succeed. Because I was going through a really bad time at work, and I just wasn't able to make a success out of a certain business that we'd started. He said, just keep at it. Right? He said, you got no option. You keep going and you stay at it. He said, you'll get it right. But he says, you have no option but to succeed. What he was trying to tell me is that don't let excuses creep into your mind. At the back of your mind, don't think, we'll see what happens, right? Don't do that, okay? Go in with a winner's mindset, okay? And you say that, I've got to get this. I've got to knock it out of the park.
So I've got a case I actually wanted to ask you. You kind of did answer a bit of it earlier. If we were to take away like all your accomplishments and we were to take away the cash, we were to take away your networks that you've built, and let's say we take you and put you in a 20-year-old's body and you're starting from zero. Maybe you have a mobile phone and Wi-Fi connectivity.
Okay.
What would you do to kind of make your money?
Make my money.
Yeah.
If I was 20, the first thing I would do in hindsight is not money, it's health. Okay. The first thing I would actually want to do is invest in my health, because I love a very active lifestyle. I love a super fit lifestyle. And I think that if I have just this incredible force of energy physically, I can actually be a better entrepreneur, right? Because, if I'm gonna slum it through the night and do some work, I don't want to wake up jaded. Okay, I want to wake up still being energetic. And I've done this, and I found that your health takes a toll. The better an entrepreneur you get, sometimes, the success of an entrepreneurship and the health of an entrepreneur is inversely proportionate. So I've paid the price for it too, and now I look after myself a lot more. So that's the first thing. Train myself to do that, which I never really did, and probably stay off stuff which I should have. Okay, and have like a lot of junk food and things like that. I mean, I think through the 20s, you're just bulletproof and you're doing all of that stuff. So I would do that first. The second thing I probably would do is I'd rather than being distracted, so I would spend maybe a decade looking at, let's say, one space and working in that one space to attain the knowledge that I need to then go and branch out. So maybe I would pick healthcare or I would pick education. I love these two spaces. And I would just stay the course in it, because I don't have to be an entrepreneur at 21, right? Being an entrepreneur at 21, I was an entrepreneur, by the way, at the same age as you guys, right? So it's a bit of it's an advantage and a disadvantage, because you want to see what the other side also looks like, right?
Yeah.
You want to have walked in an employee's shoes for those many number of years as well, because you want to know how to manage a team. You want to have those skills, so you become a better entrepreneur. So I would pick one area which is an evergreen area and pick a really good company, work with them maybe for 10 years. After that, if I think I've got enough funds and I've got enough belief and people believe in me, I would certainly branch out as an entrepreneur into that area. So health, experience, and then take the shot.
So today's podcast was deeply insightful. We managed to cover a wide range from early stage startups to late stage startups and even a little bit of lifestyle in between. So I think it's been a fantastic chat. And if there's one thing you take away from this, it's that anybody can be an entrepreneur. And I think an idea that was in your head, you taking it out and making it exist is pretty damn cool.
I've had a great time. I'm talking to two very successful entrepreneurs that have taken a big exit, in the fintech space, which is amazing, right? And so I get to learn as much from you guys as you guys get to learn from me. So it's been a very enriching experience for me. Thank you for having me, and I've loved.
Happy to hear. Thank you so much.
I love being on the Shiv Nadar School Podcast. Thank you.